Welcome to The Screen Queen, the show where I'll be talking about your favorite show or your favorite movie. You'll just have to find out what you're about to know. This is your Screen Queen, your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome back to the show. This is your female Tarantino, your host, Samantha Parrish. Now, it's no doubt that Ghost is one of the most beautiful romantic movies that we've ever had and has stood the test of time. But over time, it's still hard to believe that people sat there in the theater and just went, the guy that made Airplane directed this movie? Ghost was the game changer of the 1990s. This was one of the first few supernatural movies to be nominated for an original motion picture award. It took home more than $200 million, and along with Pretty Woman in the same year, both became big box office successes to revitalize the romance genre. Even though romance movies are kind of like a dime a dozen and it's incorporated, it didn't really get a lot of recognition to be taken a little bit more seriously. Even though, yes, this is a movie that has an abundance of cheesy lines, this was a movie that didn't feel like other romance movies, which is probably why people keep coming back to Ghost, because of the fact that it feels more than what you bargained for. So, what happened in the afterlife of this movie? What else was going to be in this movie? And how was this movie almost doomed from the start? Well, get ready to be ghosted, because this is Ghost. So we wouldn't have Ghost if it wasn't for a man named Bruce Joel Rubin. This was the man that worked tirelessly on this story and was adamant about trying to get this script onto the screen. And after many years, he was finally greenlit that his story was going to be a major motion picture. And once he found out, he went and asked the movie production company. He's like, all right, so who's the director? Do we got Martin Scorsese? Is it Francis Ford Coppola? Who do we got? And they told him the two words that just shut him down. They told him, you got Jerry Zucker. Now, before I talk more about that moment with the writer, let me tell you about who Jerry Zucker is for those out there that might not know who Jerry Zucker is. I didn't really know about this until after I saw Ghost to put the pieces together. Jerry Zucker is one half of the brother duo of the Zucker brothers who made the Airplane movie, the thing I mentioned at the beginning. Now you know why people were probably confused, like, wait a minute, what's the guy from Airplane making a movie about sad love stories about ghosts and stuff? What's going on here? Well, before Jerry Zucker was given his accolades for making this movie, there wasn't a lot of faith in him. And Bruce Joel Rubin did say that he did not have any faith for Jerry Zucker to make his story into the way that he envisioned it. He said in interviews that when he heard the name, he said, I cried. Honestly, I don't blame him. If I found out that the story I worked on tirelessly for years was in the hands of someone that had a blow-up doll co-pilot for a movie, I'd be a little scared too. But on top of that, the first thing that came to his mind was that if this story is in the hands of Jerry Zucker, is this going to end up similar to Beetlejuice also being a ghost story with heavy comedic elements, which I can totally see that, but that's not what Bruce Joel Rubin wants. So he sat down with Jerry Zucker and said, listen, buddy, I know your work, and this is very important to me. I don't want any of the stuff you do in your comedy movies in this story. And Jerry Zucker just said, yeah, you're right. So what do you want for the movie? This is your story. Let's take it scene by scene to tell me what you want. And they sat and had a very lengthy conversation that shifted from being very frigid and a little bit like strangers to kind of feeling like best friends. They were on the same page, being thick as thieves as they discussed every single scene. And from what I read, there was no drama at all that happened during the production of Ghost, which is kind of rare that a writer and a director are on the same page. Jerry Zucker knew going into this that it was a different ballgame for him, and he needed to know what to do to be able to helm the story of something that was out of his element. And shit, I mean, gotta give credit where credit's due. Jerry Zucker really did prove a lot of people wrong by doing something out of his comedic genre. But with having the doubts cast aside, they had everything ready. All of the parts were perfectly put into place. They were ready to start having this movie being made, except they didn't have one very important piece. And that was Patrick Swayze. Patrick Swayze said that he would only do the movie and he would play the part of Sam Wheat if and only if they got Whoopi Goldberg for the movie. That's right. Because of Whoopi Goldberg, we have this movie. Isn't that a strange thing to have to say? Now, at that time, Whoopi Goldberg was a very busy woman. She had so many projects going on that she wasn't sure if she could be able to schedule the time to be able to do her scenes for the movie. And Patrick was adamant about it. He just said, I love her work so much and I know she's perfect for this role. So I will say yes until you get Whoopi to say yes. And after some scheduling conflicts were set aside and they were able to successfully get Whoopi Goldberg for the role of Oda Mae Brown, that made Patrick Swayze say yes to the role of Sam Wheat. So after they got Whoopi, they made a big whoopee and they could finally get going with the movie. However, the funny thing though is that before they got Patrick Swayze, they had a few contenders in mind about who they were going to get to play Sam Wheat. There was talks about Harrison Ford playing Sam, Tom Cruise playing Sam, and even Demi Moore, the co-star of the movie, her husband, ex-husband Bruce Willis, was also in talks of playing a ghost. Yeah, look at that fucking irony in about 9 years for Bruce Willis. But all of them passed on it, and if memory serves, Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise both said the same answer, where they said, I just don't want to play a dead person. Well, their careers certainly aren't dead, but I'm pretty sure they were stopped dead in their tracks when they found out the movie they passed on made over $200 million. There's one thing I love about this movie that I have carried with me for a lot of my life, and I even cite this as inspiration for my writing, is that this movie does not get enough credit for being a multi-genre movie. Now, to the core and its genre, it is a romance movie. That's how we got sold on the thing in the first place. But when you really look at it, you don't get a romance movie. You get everything. You get romance. You get horror. You get drama. You get comedy. You get thriller. When would you see another movie that was able to creatively and correctly utilize other elements of genres without having to feel that one genre overshadowed the other one? I don't know how much of a pull that Jerry Zucker had when it came to having comedic moments in the film, but everything works for this humor. It's a different type of humor to see from him, having it incorporated into a movie where you can definitely tell this man knows how to use humor, to be able to go for the gold or to just have it be like a palate cleanser and just have it throughout the audience. Because shit, you do need some moments for a laugh here and there without having to feel that the movie isn't trying to go for a different identity. This movie truly does feel like a roller coaster, and that's the way that Jerry Zucker put it. When he found out what the script was like, he set out to make this movie feel like a roller coaster. And having all those multi-genres does feel like every twist and turn is a new genre you're going into. You didn't expect that you were going to go in that direction, but it has a good flow into the other way, just the way a roller coaster would do. It's never a bumpy ride. It goes all the way through with smooth sailing. Ghost is a movie that has so many things going on at one time, but you never feel that you're overwhelmed with the way that it unpacks so much stuff. With all of the multiple genres that's in this movie, and the layers in those genres, all of those layers are elaborated on. And one of those layers I want to talk about is coping. There's a scene in the movie, which ironically is the first scene ever filmed for the movie, is when Molly goes to the police station with the information that she got from the psychic, Oda Mae Brown, with what Sam said to her, that the man that killed him was Willie Lopez, and he lives at such and such street, and that she has to go to the police. And she does that. However, there's a big big curveball that happens when there's no file on Willie Lopez, but there is a file on the psychic that talks to her. And it's like oh no, God. It's an awful moment because of what we know, that Sam really is out there and he's talking to her. But unfortunately, this is a tough slice of life out there, that there are moments where, unfortunately, there are people that might not have that gift to talk to the afterlife, and we end up talking to someone that gypped us the entire time. Isn't the situation here, but it's a situation that unfortunately does happen to other people. And the one thing I love about this scene is the detective. This guy is one of my other new favorite characters for the fact that he talked to her in a way that had to do with the professionalism to tell her what he knows, and the unfortunate slice of life that does happen with people that are preyed upon, but he doesn't dismiss her emotions, that he listened to everything she had to say and knows that she is grieving. I don't think I've ever seen another movie, well, I probably have. This is probably one of the very few professional scenes that I have seen when it comes to people in the law enforcement department that give us something that we would hear in real life. It didn't need this big dramaticism of, you got lied to, get on with your life, or, yeah, sorry, nothing we can do about it. He's very calmly and sympathetically telling her that it's not her fault for just wanting one more moment. And he even says that in the movie, that we all do want one more moment with the ones that we love. It's such a simple line, but it's a powerful line for how much it has a strong echo to real life, for how much all of us have lost someone and we want just one more moment with them. Even as I say that, I'm getting a little bit misty in my eyes. And the way Molly falls apart in the police station, where she has all of these things that unfortunately just live on in a moment, that all she has left are the moments. She thought she had Sam one more time, but in the whole cusp of everything in the plot, yes, he is still there, but at that moment she has to grasp that maybe she was lied to and that she got gypped. And that scene doesn't get enough credit for how it was able to work with coping in a way that all of us can understand that, and all of us can feel that it justifies our emotions, and that it's not wrong for the fact that we have to cope in our own time. Would you ever think Ghost would be one of those movies that became like a silent trailblazer to talk about coping? I didn't think that. Ghost really is one of those movies that does set an example of these stages of grief. Grief comes in many ways. We all grieve in different ways. I grieve in different ways. But it goes unspoken with the way that Molly grieves for Sam. That even though she talks out loud as if he's there when she doesn't know he really is there. But it's a wonderful little unspoken niche in the movie that her way of grieving is to wear his shirts. This completely went over my head the first time I watched it, where she was talking about taking his shirts to the cleaners, and then she couldn't go through with it because the owner of the cleaning company had said, "Tell Sam I said hello." Sam's clothes being cleaned means she'll lose the scent, she'll lose that stain on the shirt, she'll lose the memory. It just becomes a shirt. Because it wasn't just anyone's shirt, it was Sam's shirt. All the things that made Sam is in that shirt. And you see her wear that shirt for a majority of the movie in order to feel like he's still there. She's still processing the grief of trying to get over him, but sometimes you just kind of have to let grief ride with you for a little while. You can't shake grief off. You just have to hang on to it for a little while until it lets you go. It's kind of the best way to put it in a strange way. This is a bit of a personal side story that I want to include for the episode. I honestly haven't thought about this for years, but I had forgotten how Ghost was one of the very first movies of my life that taught me a lot about what happens in intense situations of life or death. I never thought Ghost would be that movie, but it was there. I don't know why the hell I put the channel on there, but I remembered my eyes were just glued to the TV screen for something that I couldn't really understand contextually, but I could understand physically. I don't think kids get enough credit for how they're able to put the pieces together and not be scarred for life. Oftentimes, whenever kids are shown something, it's always going to be, oh, they're going to take it the wrong way and they're going to get messed up. Like, no, like, let them write it out. They can put the context clues together. And I remember watching the final scenes of Ghost, where the big climax happened, and Oda and Molly are running away from Carl, and Sam is doing everything in his, well, ghost powers to help stop it. I still had no idea that he was dead the whole time because I came at the wrong time, but I could put the pieces together pretty quickly. That he couldn't really be seen, but he was helping them with the way that he disappeared, and yet all of a sudden you would see Carl get pushed by something and go, oh, I bet it's that guy in the red shirt. And then Carl gets killed, and because of his actions, he is taken away by these very creatively looking scary demons that are taking him to hell. I mean, of all the depictions that we've ever gotten of demons that come drag people to hell, that's pretty simply creative. I got a little bit more to say about them later on, but I'm gonna wrap up my little story real quick. And then when Sam is revealed and Molly can finally see him and all this beautiful array of lights shine on him, oh my god, I don't mind telling you, that was the first moment in my life that I was speechless. That was one of the first moments of my life that I got to see something that was truly magical in the ethereal sense, that I might not know what it is, but I had an example of what I would eventually learn when that moment came up again. We get these moments in our lives growing up where we might not know what it is, but it's wonderful to have an example early on to put the pieces together, and then that moment becomes much more magical. So in a way, it's kind of nice to have to say that Ghost kind of grew up with me and gave me some of these examples that I would learn later on in life. It's nice when we have those certain movies or TV shows that give us the example before we learn them later on. And now, 20 years later, that feels weird to have to say that. 20 years of having this movie a part of my life, I still watch it as if I'm watching it for the first time. Every single time I watch it, even though I know what happens, I know who killed Sam, I know how this whole thing is going to end, but it still gets me teary-eyed near the end to see something so beautiful and something that we don't really get too much of. These days, sometimes it gets oversensitized and overdone and overdramatic when they just let this last moment of Ghost just go out the way it has to be, to have that one last moment to say, I love you. And you mean so much to me. And we all wish that we could have that moment, but it's nice to know what it could have looked like, or maybe knowing, hey, maybe they are there the whole time and they do know that we love them very much. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit, misty, but that's kind of the beautiful thing about Ghosts, is that it does make you miss the ones you love and know that they still love you, no matter what happens. And you don't get a movie like that these days, you just don't. That moment in the movie is when it officially stops being a movie, and it gives you a moment to yourself. It gives you something that maybe you needed. It gives you something that maybe you needed to hear. And that's the beautiful thing about movies it doesn't get enough credit for, is that it's more than just entertainment. It gives you something that maybe you really needed. Ooh, my eyeballs. Woo! Oh my gosh, it's a misty flood over here, guys. Woo! I don't mind telling everyone that this movie is a part of a very selective list of movies that make me cry. It takes a lot to get me to cry during a movie. I used to be like this tough as nails, be like, nothing can make me cry. They're just actors and actresses. But as I got older and experienced some tough slices of life, the moments hit me differently than they were when I was younger, because I did not know what loss was. I didn't really experience a lot with love, so now watching a movie where I officially do have something that feels paralleled to those characters, now I understood why people would say it's a very sad movie moment, because it hits them in a way that makes them remember what happened to them for what they experienced. That was definitely a hard lesson for me to have to rewatch that movie. So now every time just feels like the very first time because of the way that, like I said, the way this movie has grown up with me. But this movie works on such a magical level is probably because of the emotions. A lot of the effects in this movie are somewhat simple. I've read that the penny scene was pretty difficult, but it had to be done, and it was one of the proudest works that Jerry Zucker said that he did by having the penny scene there for something to prove to Molly that he's been there the whole time. And the way that it just kind of floats in the air, I'm glad they didn't overdo that scene with something like a puff of smoke or trying to make it topsy-turvy. Like, you got to really see the effort it took for him to lift something with his mind to show Molly that he's been there the whole time. And seeing the tears fall down Molly's face just brings it on home for the weight that that scene feels, where she realizes that he's been there the whole time. And it's just something simple with a penny being hoisted above the wall and then lifted into the air and propped into her hand. It didn't need any more, it didn't need any less. And the same thing goes for the demons in this movie. Now, this is something that's not really well known, and it makes me laugh, to be honest, to find this out. And it's going to change the way that you see this movie. But whenever you see the demons that take away the characters in this movie, those guttural, shrieking growls are babies crying. The sound effects team for the movie recorded a lot of babies crying, and then they took the sound audio and they lowered the pitch down to a very low setting, and they probably stretched it out a little bit, like slowed it down so it's like in slow motion, so you get like a real slow growl. And you would never think that the entire time that this terrifying scene is going on that it's actually babies crying. And saying that, like, again, it's a simple thing about this movie that they didn't have to try so hard for this movie. They just did some very simple things and just reworked it. I love it when movies do that, where they don't have to go above and beyond, and you're actually, like, sitting there with bewilderment, like, really? That's what you did to make this work? And that's probably why it feels like a movie that has so much more into it, yet not a lot really went into it. They just kind of did some simple stuff and let the story speak for itself. To think that Ghost is 33 years old, and yet it still doesn't feel like a product of its time. I used the term time capsule a few times on this show, where I talk about a movie that it definitely shows its age, but Ghost is not really a movie that shows its age. Like, yes, you can tell this is a movie made in the 90s. You could be blind and know this was a movie in the 90s. For the style and some of the terms and everything. Even the writer of the movie even said that this movie feels dated because of the video cassette tapes in Arsenio Hall. But the thing that makes this movie feel timeless and doesn't make it feel like a product of its time is the moral and the message of, do you believe in life after death? Do you believe in the afterlife? Do you believe the ones who love us are looking after us? It's something that we never really say to ourselves, and we have that said in a movie like Ghost. But the movie just, it lives on in so many ways. After the movie came out, there were still many women that came up to Patrick Swayze and asked him to say the final line of the film, where he says, "I love you, Molly, and I always will." Or they say, okay, say the other line. And he's like, ditto. To think that this movie was that strong that people still wanted to hear that in real life. God, I miss Patrick Swayze. He was such a great man. He always gave us the time of our life, you know? But even the people that worked in the film still are appreciated by this movie. Even Whoopi Goldberg, who does not have the best repertoire these days, no matter what happened, she always thanked Patrick for getting her onto this movie. And she got the Golden Globe because of this movie. And she said on her talk show to talk about his memory and her time on Ghost and what he did for her, that her gratitude still carried all those years, and it still carries on probably as I'm speaking. And in that moment on that show, she said, "Because of you, Patrick, I have a Golden Globe. Thank you so much." This was the game changer for everybody, to be able to do a movie with so many layers. You really got to see all the expressive emotions out of all of these actors, and the way that they make these characters come to life. You love to see these characters, but then it also makes you sad knowing you're going to have to say goodbye to these characters. You rarely have an ensemble where you have so many actors that come together that truly make you forget that you're watching a movie. Everyone's fantastic in it, from Patrick Swayze, Whoopi Goldberg, and of course, like, Demi Moore just, like, takes the cake. I wish that she got more awards because of this movie. Opened up the doors for her to do more of a career in the 90s. Kind of. There's going to be some more talk about her and her future career on some of the other episodes on the Screed Queen. But without Demi Moore, damn, like, I don't think the fucking movie could have worked. It sounds strange to say that because, well, Patrick Swayze plays the ghost in, well, Ghost. Whoopi Goldberg is a great part of it, but she is truly the emotions that drive this movie together, where you see how she's processing her grief. Just like the scene I mentioned earlier where she's trying to cope with the fact that she may or may not have been gypped, and how she's processing her grief with his shirts and everything. My God, you don't really see a character like Molly these days, and you wouldn't really have that if it wasn't for Demi Moore. She did the once-in-a-lifetime performance that does not get enough praise. However, there is something about Demi Moore's performance that I never noticed before, is that you don't really see her smile a lot, and that's actually due to the fact that Demi Moore has said that she does not like smiling. So, anytime you see her in a movie and she's smiling, she's like, okay, this is the best you're gonna get, and it's one of them quick, like, 1, 2, 3 cheese smiles. So to get around this predicament, what the editors did for the movie was anytime there was a moment that Molly would smile, they would take the scene and they would slow it down so you could hold on Demi Moore's smile for a little bit longer for the scene than having to ask her to smile longer and have to bring her back in. It's just like, hey, she's not comfortable smiling. We're not going to force her to do an extra long smile. But with that said, you could watch this movie over and over again and not see that they slowed down the film. Trust me, when I found out that information, I was going through my head of all the scenes that Demi Moore was smiling, and I did not recall any moment that looked like it was going too slow or looked like it had obviously been tampered with. They did such a great job making it look like Demi Moore was smiling longer. They did a really good job on this movie. It is really one of those movies that's so perfect that even things that's like a minor convenience doesn't look like a minor convenience. It's a movie that, no matter where it goes or who it goes to, it has a way of just carrying on and living on, despite the fact that it's a movie where sometimes the end must come and you have to go to another place. But this movie still definitely went places. It's been parodied numerous times. It is still given its accolades for being one of the best romantic movies, but also one of few supernatural movies to ever win an original motion picture award. Now think about that! That was wild when I read about that. But there's also something to be said too about a tiny reference that doesn't really get talked about. The man that plays the villain in this movie, Tony Goldwyn, went on to go do the show Scandal from 2012 until, I think it was 2018. And sure enough, they slid a reference to Ghost in there, and thinking that maybe people would catch on to it, and it kind of makes me die a little bit on the inside that there's no trivia to verify this, that there's an episode in Scandal that's called Molly, You in Danger, Girl. And I'm like, come on! What? I wish that episode got more awareness for the fact that they made a flat-out Ghost reference without having to mention Ghost in the damn thing. That's a first for me. That it's basically making a nod to the actor who was in the movie. But damn, I wish that also got a little bit more awareness. Nothing really special. That didn't segue into anything. I just had to mention that. To close out this episode, there really is no other way to say it. Ghost is a fucking perfect movie, and that's a title that I rarely give to certain movies, but it's perfect in the sense of what I've been saying this entire episode, is that it relies on the simplicity of things, and it lets the story drive itself, and you have a powerhouse performance by so many actors and actresses in here that you know they had a wonderful time working on this film, but you also know that they look at this film with a lot of sadness because of the passing of Patrick Swayze. Even me, like, every time I watch Ghost, I'm like, shit, I wish Patrick Swayze was here to see how much people really loved Ghost beyond the later years, going in the 90s, going into 2000s, and even now, after we've already had another, 13 years without Patrick Swayze, that he's not here to see all these things. That man was just a fucking force of everything. He was the jack of all trades. He gave us Dirty Dancing, he gave us Ghost, he gave us Roadhouse, which that I can't wait to gloss upon that in another episode. He did so much for cinema. He was such an amazing person. It's like what Rob Lowe said to comment about him after his passing, that he was everything but an astrophysicist. He was everything to us. He gave us something that we needed, and that was knowing that everything is going to be okay, even after tragedy happens. What he did as Sam Wheat filled the gaps and holes of so many people that were grieving for someone. Even him, who was grieving for his own father, was able to find closure in the later movies and was recognized for his remorse for his father that got him in these certain roles. But also, this was a role that he preferred the most for the fact that it was a movie about coping, and that was something he struggled with for so long, was coping with his father's death. This is a very strange tangent to go on for my final points, but when it comes down to it, this movie really is about Patrick Swayze's legacy. And out of all the movies he's done, this was the pinnacle of his career. That he was known for something more than dancing. He was finally out of his typecast role for doing action movies and has that one pinnacle of something that everyone will remember him for. But they remember him in Ghost for all of the reasons, for his joy, his charisma, his talent, his ambition, his energy, his empathy, everything in this movie. It almost feels like a very nice blessing that I get to cover 2 Patrick Swayze movies for the month of the Valentine's Day series. And I'm glad that I got the opportunity to be able to talk about one of the movies that impacted me as a movie buff, but also getting to talk about one of the best actors that we've ever had, but also the ones that we're never going to get again. As much as the ending to Ghost is extremely sad, knowing that this is the way it has to happen, that we finally get to see Sam Wheat cross over into heaven, but it's that moment of watching Demi Moore just break down into tears because of a moment that we've all felt when we want to see someone one more time. And I'm crying again in this fucking episode. Oh my god. But we get to have that moment with her, in a way, when she watches him go to heaven, and to see how, gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. This is very tough to talk about. It's such a beautiful, ethereal scene, but it's also something that makes you sad and comforted at the same time, to know that the ones you love are in a better place. And that's a moment that we have in cinema history that encapsulates that feeling that we've all had. And we got that with Ghost. It's something that makes you feel all of your emotions, that even though the movie ends and you are sad for the fact that you got to see Sam Wheat cross over, but you're also comforted with the fact that Sam Wheat is in heaven. And that's something that we all want with our loved ones. And Ghost gave us that comfort that we all needed in our life. It's been going on for 30 years, and it's just going to keep on going. No matter what, it's going to make us believe in the good, and that our loved ones are in a better place. Alright, that is officially a wrap on the Ghost episode. I don't mind telling you guys that this was a difficult episode. I did not expect to get so emotional during this episode. And I also was a little bit nervous to do this episode too, because of the fact that this is one of our greatest movie achievements. It's something that has been in our cinema history, and there have been so many movie critiquers that have said such like professional things about the movie, and then here I am in my little podcast closet and talking about the movie in my own way to put my own spin on it with the trivia that I learned and my thoughts on it and my own personal story and trying to marry everything together. This was the most taxing episode to have to do since probably the Nightingale and the Rambo episode. So I really appreciate everyone out there that had the patience with me during this episode. I really appreciate that. And without further delay, now is the time to find out what the last episode is going to be for the Valentine series on the Screen Queen. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna shake these last remaining contenders up in this little purple box I got. Okie dokie, let me make sure it's all mixed together. Okay, that should be good enough. Alrighty, let's find out. What's this? Holy shit. Wow. This is the way that the Valentine series should go out. That is absolutely perfect. Wow. I hold a heavy one here in my hand, guys, and you're about to find out why this is the heaviest piece of paper that I've held in my hand. For the last episode on the Valentine series is going to be loving. Yep, here we go. We're bouncing right into a piece of history. Here we go. Honestly, I've been waiting for that movie for a long time. There's so much to unpack about that one, and it's going to be a long episode too. I can just smell it already, so I hope you guys are going to, clear your afternoons in advance, because we're going to dive into that episode hardcore. Alrighty. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. I hope everyone had a wonderful Valentine's Day, and I hope everyone is doing good out there, and if you have gone through what I've mentioned in this episode and you've lost someone in your life, I am so sorry for what you went through, and I hope that you get better day by day by day, and maybe I hope this episode helped you out as well, because we all find comfort in coping in different ways. So with that said, this is your Screen Queen, signing off. You take care and stay amazing. Bye-bye!